Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to this episode today and speaking with me. Just to sort of start off, do you mind briefly introducing yourself as well as walking us through your journey?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Anita Raj. I'm currently a second year at Columbia University. I'm in the engineering school. I'm studying computer science and I'm also minoring in economics and entrepreneurship and innovation. So again, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm heavily involved in STEM. I'm pretty passionate about software engineering specifically, because that's what I'm studying here. But I'm also really interested in bringing equity to the tech space. Some of my previous efforts have mainly been in education technology, but um, but yeah, I think that it's really great to grow like both academically in this environment. It's really challenging, but at the same time, it reminds me that we have to give back in the education and like technology space. And I do my best where I can. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Sounds good. I was wondering what your motivation was behind first, like choosing a STEM career, but second, also sort of dedicating a part of your time to advocating for equity in STEM and technology.
Yeah, of course. So, when I was younger, I definitely was more interested in the humanities. I was a reader and I was a really avid writer. There's many times where I've like pursued writing a book because I'm really passionate about it. It's still something I enjoy doing. I think my first real experience with STEM was when I was in middle school, so like quite a while ago. I attended this STEM camp at the University of Sciences in Philly, which is now St. Joseph's University. They had this physics wonder camp, only all for girls. And that's kind of where it wasn't just a physics camp, so it wasn't just like physics concepts. There's a lot of mechanics, a lot of building, but also learning a lot about theory of like more of like like the applied sciences, so like applied math, applied physics. And that's kind of where I got really interested in STEM, specifically the building part. I remember that's where I built like my first battery powered like machine. It was like a submarine. It came in a kit, of course. It was pretty straightforward now that I look back at it, but when I was building it, I felt really cool because we were building it in like a makerspace kind of area. So it's kind of how I got more interested in STEM. And again, that was more of like a hands-on application of STEM. But then when I got more into high school, I started programming and I realized that I was really interested in like software engineering. And so that's kind of how I ended up where I am right now. But yeah, let me know if I need to elaborate on anything, I'd be more than happy to.
Sort of on the same note, I was wondering like what initiatives have you been a part of, as well as like what challenges have you faced specifically, and how did you overcome them, and sort of like what did you learn from them?
Yeah. So I think two that come to mind. One is more recent, one's a little bit in the past when I was in high school a few years ago. During the pandemic, it was obviously a challenge for everyone. I think that was my sophomore year of high school. And learning was difficult for everyone, especially for those who are coming from like disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, like getting access to education. And even for myself, like where I lived and like kind of like the way my school system worked, it was definitely pretty difficult during the pandemic. So, what I did was I thought I really want, and that's when I started also getting into like programming and like development and things like that. So I was thinking, I was trying to come up with an idea of how can we bridge like the disconnect in the classroom using technology. So that's when I started exploring education technology. And my brother and I co-founded a free e-learning platform called eCore Academy, where essentially students like ourselves we try to curate free course material for other students to use. So like we teach lessons. Of course we don't assume we're experts in these areas, but we like teach lessons on subjects that we are passionate about. For example, I started teaching a course like an express version of Java because it's one of my favorite programming languages. It's really just about providing access to these materials. And it started with being something during the pandemic, but it eventually reached a global audience. So we realized this platform is more so targeted at like bringing equity to education via technology to people across the world. And that kind of became the goal of it. One of the biggest challenges was obviously we were in high school, so sustaining something like if you want to think of something like Coursera or Khan Academy, they have full-fledged professionals and teams working with them. They have funding from like the Gates Foundation and just all this infrastructure in place. Just because something's not a business, just because something's a nonprofit doesn't mean it's like straightforward to run, especially something where you have to constantly be putting out content and it has to be quality content. It's not just like social media content. It has to be really curated, edited, accurate because it's educational information. So it's definitely difficult. As well as we had a creator community of like 50 other students who were great, who were helping us. But of course, they have busy schedules. So working around everyone's skill sets, everyone's availabilities, the different passions everyone like brought and what they specifically wanted to contribute to the platform rather than us telling them what to contribute. These were all challenges we faced. But the platform is still up and it's still like available for people to use. So hopefully that's going to be a bit of like a legacy I hope I leave behind in like high school. And then something a little bit more recent, during my time here at Columbia. I'm a sophomore, so it hasn't been like super long yet, but this year I was actually the executive lead for our Columbia's hackathon called DivHacks, which is a diversity hackathon. It's hosted by our Women in Computing Society or Women in Computer Science. Pre-professional club on campus, which is the largest club on campus. And essentially, we had like 300 individuals from schools all across the tri-state area, honestly, all across the Northeast, who came to campus and competed in this hackathon. And the theme that we came up with like was technology for social good. So like, how can we use technology to improve the quality of life in different sectors of society, like education, healthcare, fashion, etc. So that was like a recent thing that we did. And our goal with that, and the reason I bring that up is because our goal with that was not just for the hackers to come and create impressive projects that they could put in their portfolios and resumes. Rather, it seems like every single group that created a project walked away with either some kind of startup or some kind of business idea of of a product that could actually benefit society in some way by using technology as a medium to do that. For example, there was one of I think our winning team created a kind of technology project that helps people who suffered from stroke. So obviously that's going to go out in the world and do good for people. Someone who created like an accessible map that actually has pins on what are like if you want to access a building, what is an accessible feature like a ramp or an elevator that it might have for individuals who might have disabilities. So that was something recent that we also worked on. I was really proud to be a part of it. It was a lot of work, but it was definitely worth it.
Sounds amazing. I was also just wondering, how has being a student at Columbia sort of changed or like altered or influenced both your social life, your personal life, as well as your academic life?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Um, I think that high school is very different from college. In high school, I was exposed to lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, people who had different levels of interest in academics, people who had like different passions. But when I come here, it's definitely a very competitive environment, and I think that applies to any school that you go to. But I find that the people here are like very passionate about what they do. Something I noticed is the emphasis on like interdisciplinary studies. For example, I came here wanting to just study computer science, but now I'm like in my second year and I'm really interested in economics. So I'm pursuing like a career at like the intersection of those two. So not only do I want to study like computer science, but I want to see how can I apply that to like financial technology. So like banking, security, etc. Like I've done some research on like how can we use quantum computing, which is a really theoretical, like it's research, but it's still pretty theoretical concept in computer science. How can we actually apply that to commercial banking or a system of banking that like every single person in, for example, America uses? Like how can like this really theoretical computer science subject be applied to something that every person needs, which is like a bank account and just like a bank? So I think that coming here, it's really opened my eyes to like interdisciplinary things and also like practical applications. So like if I'm learning from these like different topics from all of my classes, and yeah, they're super challenging, but what am I actually going to apply? So like if I want to go into research, like what skills am I actually going to apply in my research? Or like if I'm going into industry, like what am I picking up in class and learning in class that I can actually apply to industry? So it starts giving you that focus on like how do I apply what I'm learning in the classroom to like what I want to do in my career, whether that be research or industry or whatever. Whereas maybe in high school, you're like, I'm learning for the sake of getting good grades. Here, you're learning to actually apply it like in the future. Um, but otherwise, I think I can speak a little bit more to the engineering school here. It's definitely smaller than other schools. I think in my class, there's only about 350 students in the engineering school itself. So it's a very like intimate community, which I actually really love. I think it's like 50% computer science majors, but there are like representation across other departments, all the way from electrical engineering to computer engineering, chemical engineering, etc. But again, it's a really tight-knit community, and I can speak specifically for the computer science community, but the professors here are super approachable. They're all experts in their fields. But one of the biggest benefits I feel I have by being part of the CS community here is our upperclassmen. They all have so much experience, whether it be in like research in their areas, whether it be like AI, ML, security, whatever they're passionate about, but also industry, because they go and work for some of the most impressive companies out there, but they're super down to earth and more than willing to like sit down and talk to you about their experiences to see, help you decide like what you're interested in. It's not so much about being like having like bragging rights, like, oh, I worked at so and so company or I interned at so and so company. It's more so, hey, I interned at so and so company. I really enjoyed my experience here, or I really didn't enjoy my experience here. This is what the experience looked like. So maybe you can foresee yourself possibly working there too and applying there and going through the interview process there. So again, I think the community of upperclassmen here is like really invaluable, especially in STEM.
I see. I was also just wondering, since you mentioned earlier that you originally had like a pretty strong background in humanities, I was just wondering how did that exactly maybe shape your STEM perspective or maybe like affected or changed it in any sort of way?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a really good question. Um, hmm, I think that it's helped me in the sense, I wouldn't say it's helped me as much with the STEM part, but it really helped me learn about like my passion for economics, which is like the minor I'm studying here. And in turn, by learning that I was passionate about economics, I was able to find like that practical application of computer science in like economics, which is more of like a mathy, more humanities subject, and like realized I wanted a career there. But essentially, like my interest in humanities helped me like led me to take economics courses here actually. And I walked into them thinking it was going to be very mathy, very calculus based, like spreadsheets and like really accounting heavy, but that's actually the complete opposite. For example, economics has macroeconomics and microeconomics studies like the consumer, and it really goes into like psychology and sociology. And you never would think that economics go to those places, but it's so important to understand like who a consumer is and how they think and how they rationalize things. And then you look at the bigger picture of like how can you now like predict economic patterns across like a whole population or across a whole country based on that single individual? So at the end of the day, it like boils down to like an individual psychology and like their rationale for like buying things or like maximizing their happiness by owning something. So I think I actually did AP Psych in high school, so I could kind of see the connection between like understanding how people make decisions being applied to something that I thought would be more STEM focused, like economics. So I think that that specifically helped me figure out that I had a passion for economics and that I want to pursue some kind of career at the intersection of CS, which is more STEM, but also gave me an appreciation for economics, which is a little bit more on the humanities side, I'd say.
I see, that sounds great. I was also just curious about what you sort of do, or like, how do you stay motivated when you face like difficult challenges and setbacks?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does get tough here. Like you should see the libraries during final season. It's really bad out here, but there's definitely times I've been working and like I close my eyes for a second and I'm asleep and it's like 20 minutes later and I didn't even realize like I fell asleep because I was that tired. But I think well, it definitely does get hard and I think it can get hard for like anybody, honestly. Academics is like going through that period of your life when you're studying, like you're in school is really challenging. I think some things that have helped me like get through that is like one, my community of like friends here. They remind you that you're the only one going through this. There are other sometimes sitting next to your friend who's also stressing out really does like help you because you realize you're not alone. And you realize that regardless of what's going to happen, the exam is tomorrow. You both have to sit through this. You both have to study together and get through it together. So honestly, having that like companionship can really help. And honestly, seeing other people really like grind around you does encourage you to put your best effort into what you're doing. Because when you put your best effort into like things like your academics and what you're doing, it's an investment in yourself. So it's like you want to put the best effort in yourself because when you see those results and they're good, you want to be able to say, wow, I really did work hard and I deserve the outcome. I think something else is taking time for myself. So honestly, like going on walks around campus when you feel overwhelmed, just like putting your work down for a second and taking a step back from it because when we're frustrated, we can end up going in circles and not get anything productive out of the same amount of time we could have used if we had taken a step back. And honestly, doing things you enjoy, like if like I'm in the city, so people love to explore the city, like going to the gym, just things like that. And I think the last thing I can say is honestly just reminding yourself of like your purpose. Like when I come here, I think about like the people I'm responsible for, like my family. I'm here to study to be the best version of myself, to get a job that I really enjoy, that like intellectually challenges me, but also enables me to give back to a community. You just remind yourself of your purpose, and I think that helps too.
Sorry, my computer froze for a second. I'm just gonna
You're
cut
good.
this part out.
No worries, you're all good. Yeah.
And then also, I was wondering about your sort of long-term vision, long-term goals in terms of creating change in the world, and how do you sort of see like technology serving as a medium or helping you achieve those goals?
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of going back to the hackathon that we hosted at Columbia, we saw so many different applications of how technology can do good in different like sectors of society. It's really not limited to one. Personally, I started off really passionate about education technology. Now I'm more interested in financial technology. And it's more so about like for example, I mentioned I did some research on like quantum computing and how can banks leverage something as complicated as quantum computing. And something I came across was there's a lot of people who have like small banks and try to run small banks, and they often get like overrun by these much larger commercial banks. So how do we help those like small bankers and small business owners like stay in business? Well, I did some research on quantum computing, and quantum computers are so powerful that they can actually give us so much data to help like these small business owners and small bankers figure out how to target their services better so that they can stay in the market and stay in the game. So it's just like there is people often have this negative connotation of financial technology. It's people think like the phrase that's thrown around is make the rich richer, poor poorer, which I completely don't believe in. Like it really depends on how the technology is used. So I think I'm gonna probably go down that pathway with financial technology. And I think the other, yeah, and then going back to what you were saying, I think technology can be used in like so many different mediums. For example, today I was listening to a podcast by Goldman Sachs, one of the top investment banks in the world. And you would think that they'd focus all of their energy on like financial technology, but one of the chairs I think of like the investment banking division was saying something along the lines of the fact that the companies aiming to put a ton of money in education technology, because a lot of companies and like a lot of organizations, they see people as capital. And what that means is the people that work there are like an investment, and doing whatever, like even big corporations doing whatever they can to like contribute to like their education and their improvement is like an investment. So I do think that you'll find different people, different organizations, different nonprofits investing in technology in unexpected ways because they see that technology can do good in like many different sectors of society, even in sectors of society they may not be focusing on like their business plan on. So, um, but yeah.
Sounds good. And sort of to end off, I was wondering if you had any advice for students, but particularly younger girls who may be interested in pursuing a career in STEM or leadership in the future, and also any last words you would like to share.
Yeah, of course. I would, first of all, I would highly recommend anyone to like explore STEM, especially women. I think that we're seeing increasing numbers of like women in the STEM space. If you read a lot of reports that are released by companies who are like in the technology space, you'll see things like they have 50% of employees are women, some percent of their board is women, or they have goals to reach those percentages. And like companies, nonprofits, of whatever organization you're part of, they're really making efforts to have diversity and inclusion. So don't ever think that being a woman in STEM is going to disadvantage you in any way. And another thing I think that's really important is like exploration. So don't really box yourself off. If you think a lot of underclassmen who are girls who I've talked to have told me, "Oh, I think I'm going to go into law or I think I'm going to do this or that because I don't think I have a knack for STEM. I can't crunch numbers." Well, I can't crunch numbers either. I don't like math. That's not all STEM is about. And I think that people need to, especially girls, need to take the blinders off and really explore the area. And things that helped me do that were like summer camp, like the physics summer camp I was talking about, something completely unexpected. I'm not even studying physics now, but it helped me open my eyes up to STEM. Don't be afraid to take classes at your school that are in STEM also, because a lot of people don't realize that, like for example, computer science, you're not taught that in like middle school until you get to high school, and then you see like maybe CS classes offered. You take them and then you're like, wow, I actually really enjoy programming. So taking classes, doing camps, even like online classes, there's so many free resources online too. If you feel like something sounds interesting, don't be afraid to just jump into it, because remember, developing your skills is just like an investment in yourself. So nothing is a waste of time, honestly. I think that that's why exploration is really important. Exploring things that you might end up being passionate about is not a waste of time. It's an investment in yourself, and it's one of those things you can explore is STEM. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your insight and once again for being able to make the time to come here today. Thank you.
Of course.